Hello, my name is Kristen Anderson. The purpose of this presentation is to document my 2019 Educational Technology internship with Loyola University of Maryland. A little bit more about me. I'm currently a graduate student at Loyola looking to obtain my master's degree in educational technology. I have taught mostly United States history and American government classes at Oakland Mills High School in Columbia, Maryland for 5 years. For my internship at Oakland Mills, I wanted to give teachers an alternative method of instruction, the flipped classroom. Instead of just telling them about it and leaving them on their own, I wanted to establish myself as a support system, as it can be incredibly uncomfortable to do something outside of your comfort zone. I wanted to do this through a small group setting that included both synchronous and asynchronous methods to help guide them throughout the process. More specifically, I wanted my participants to flip at least 3 lessons with different levels of classes like AP, GT, Honors, and on grade level. I wanted to do this in order to see what gaps existed when implementing the new tech tools for the flipped classroom. Participants needed to create 3 to 4 of their own models using the tech tools I would be teaching them during the internship. Finally, reflection is an incredibly important part of the process, especially when looking to future actions, so I set a goal for both participants and the students to complete surveys before and after the use of the flipped classroom. One of the first things I needed to evaluate was whether a technological change could actually be carried out at Oakland Mills. I focused especially on the first 4 of Eli's 8 conditions of change to determine if flipped classroom tech tools were appropriate for the building. First, I evaluated satisfaction with the status quo. Overall, I found that my participants were indifferent or feeling negatively with how classrooms were running in terms of teaching their content. They were looking for a change in instruction. Next, I needed to see if they had enough knowledge and skills to actually use new technology in the classroom. Only one participant disagreed, so I knew I would need to offer constant support in order to ensure everyone would feel comfortable in acquiring new skills. I then needed to see if there were enough resources in the school building to actually carry this out. Almost half of my participants felt there were not enough resources to flip a classroom. Yes, Oakland Mills does have a student population with inconsistent access to technology at home, but I knew that modifications could be made for those that struggle in that area. I kept this in mind as something I would have to address with my adult learners. Finally, was there enough time to carry this out? Most participants said yes, there was. However, because of the one participant determining there was not, I knew I needed to structure the professional development appropriately so that my learners did not feel overwhelmed. So who are these participants anyway? Through informal conversation, I identified 4 individuals, 3 social studies teachers, and 1 English teacher that were interested in learning more. I originally had 5, but a participant dropped out early due to other circumstances. But that's okay, I'll involve him in the future. My timeline was as follows. Beginning in January, I was able to group interested teachers together for the internship. In February, I conducted baseline surveys to gather more information on participant comfortability and student interest. I also created and designed the Canvas page that would house the asynchronous learning sessions on the tech tools. By late February, I had planned and ran the in-person whole group session to teach the flipped style and collaborate on solutions to potential issues. During the month of March, participants participated in the sessions on Canvas and created their own examples of the tech tools. As we moved into April, I sat down with participants in one-on-one coaching sessions to help build their flipped lessons. Before spring break was over, the lessons had been carried out, tools had been used, and reflections had been gathered. I quickly learned through the pre-meet survey that not everyone truly understood what the flipped classroom was or had never seen it in action. Only one person seemed to grasp it at a basic level. This information helped me design the in-person group meeting. Prior to meeting, though, I created a Canvas page for the participants to interact with throughout the internship. It was structured in a user-friendly way that required little skill, since all of the participants were familiar with Canvas's functions. They could access slides, surveys, codes, and tech tool posts at any moment based on their needs. Before we met, participants were required to participate in a flipped activity of my own. They engaged with 2 videos introducing them to the method and participated in a Socrative quiz so I could assess their understanding before we met. Once we met after school, I introduced them to the goals of the internship and how we would meet them. I also brought cheese and crackers because who isn't motivated by food at the end of a long school day? Most of the group session was spent collaborating on a Padlet to identify solutions to challenges they might encounter. This Padlet could be accessed at any time, and it was used frequently by the participants when they ran into issues of access to technology resources. For each tech tool, I created a screencast modeling how to develop their own. The first tool I wanted to teach was Screencast-O-Matic, which would be perfect for capturing a video of a lecture and embedding it within their own class page on Canvas for students to view. Participants were expected to create their own, reflect on their comfort level with the tool, and explain how they could use it to flip a lesson. Next, I wanted to expand upon the simple video by introducing them to Edpuzzle. This tech tool would allow them to edit a previously made YouTube video to include voiceovers, open-ended questions, and multiple choice questions to keep students engaged. Again, I asked them to create their own and reflect on its use in their own classroom. Prior to choosing Actively Learn as one of the tools, one of the participants, Matthew Hipser, asked me if videos were the only way to flip the lesson. I knew there needed to be another way, so I investigated and found Actively Learn, an online platform designed for students to interact with text. For this one, participants found it challenging to find time to actually create their own as just a model for this discussion post. So I modified and asked them to reflect on its overall use in the flipped classroom. Finally, Nearpod was taught in a similar fashion as the others, except this time, I just wanted them to explore it at their own leisure because some of my participants were feeling overwhelmed with creating more. So I scaled it back. I did recognize that more coaching on these tools might be necessary when I worked with the participants one-on-one. I was very pleased, though, to see that all of them rated their comfort levels at a 4 or a 5, which indicated to me that the teaching of the tool was effective. The one-on-one coaching took place the week of March 25th. Prior to meeting, I had sent an email out asking them their preferences for the creation of their flipped lessons, and all participants asked to meet one-on-one because a lot of them had different needs that would not apply to others. The products I got from the participants were amazing. Although not all of them were able to flip a full 3 lessons, they were at least able to test it out on some level. Here's an example product from a teacher of a World History AP class. He created a Nearpod based on an old PowerPoint he had and made it engaging with open-ended questions. The teacher was able to collect student responses to assess understanding, but more importantly, students were able to spend more class time debating the philosophical question tied to the decisions made during the Holocaust. Here's an example of a screencast created and posted on the Canvas page for an on-grade level U.S. history class. Students were able to spend class time participating in an engaging simulation based on the arms race. They were able to put it into action what they learned about online outside of the classroom. I was incredibly satisfied with the findings of the implementation of the flipped classrooms. Before using this method, students had little to no awareness of this style. In fact, someone thought it was a skydiving class. After using the strategy, students were much more aware of what it was and how it could benefit them. Despite a good amount of our student population having limited access to technology at home, over half the students completed the online assignments, and most of them acknowledged that there was a correlation between the completion of the assignment and the level of their engagement in class. I particularly liked the emphasis one student placed on this in the second to last comment. He says, "Well, I didn't complete the first one, and I was not really lost in class, and I did the second, and I was more engaged." Most students also reported that they would sometimes like their teacher to use this method, and that it might have made the learning a little better compared to the traditional method of content delivery. I also conducted a survey for my participants to reflect on the process. Overall, participants found that the flipped classroom encouraged higher levels of learning, created more motivated and engaged students, and allowed for more student collaboration. I also asked them to reflect on the structure of the professional development itself. They seemed to like my consistency with communication and individualized coaching sessions. However, some participants did not care for the functionality of some of the tools, which is understandable for a person who is used to things being done a certain way. They ultimately wanted more tools to be taught, which is interesting, because a lot of them also didn't want to feel overwhelmed with this professional development. At times, I thought to myself, okay, which one is it? They also asked me to share these with the rest of the school, which is absolutely on my radar. Finally, they responded to this question exactly as I thought they would. For the future, they needed more resources and more technological support in order to fully carry this out. This obviously will be a longer process to remedy, but it certainly is something I'm considering. Throughout my internship, I met 5 key concepts. The first one reads that candidates will be able to apply technology to facilitate a variety of effective assessment and evaluation strategies. One of the ways I was able to do this was by using my surveys on Google Forms. I also was able to fulfill assessing their understanding of the flipped classroom through the Padlet that addressed solutions to potential problems. Next, candidates had to apply models of technology in school to incorporate technology tools to improve teaching and learning. I fulfilled this by conducting surveys to see where the adult learners fell on the SAMR model. Next, I had to demonstrate the ability to lead technology initiatives at the school or district level. I did this by becoming a technology leader and resource for the flipped classroom in my school building. Candidates had to be able to determine and implement the best approaches to improving their technology integration efforts through a continual process of self-evaluation and reflection. I did this by maintaining a reflective journal throughout my entire internship so I could gather participant feedback and consider how to do things differently for the future. And last, candidates had to be able to locate a variety of technology resources, evaluate them for classroom use, and assist colleagues with this process. I did this through the development of the Canvas page that housed all the tech tools necessary to implement a flipped classroom. This could be expanded on for the entire school building in the future. I also fulfilled this key concept by organizing one-on-one coaching sessions. When I look back and reflect on the internship, I've decided to organize it in 3 different ways. I looked at what went well, what didn't go so well, and what can I do in the future. In terms of what went well, teachers were learning new tech tools, stuff that they've never even heard about before, and they were doing it in order to improve student engagement. Participation was mostly consistent. However, I was successfully able to build a solid community of learners that could eventually be expanded to a larger scale. As long as we're involving more and more teachers, we can grow this to even other schools within our county as well. Cons. There's just not enough time. I was able to do this in 3 months with some awesome participants. However, it was really hard to navigate around some of the other commitments and requirements that my participants had to fulfill in other areas of their career. I also had an issue, obviously, with the resources. There's just not enough of them to go around. In addition, I really struggled in how to appropriately accommodate in order to help out my learners provide more resources at home for their students. I also struggled with how to incentivize adult learners, but I think I remedied that one in the future actions. I'd like to implement more group sessions, not so many one-on-ones. I'd like to incentivize my learners by using CPD credits. I'd want to reach out to other departments because this absolutely can be used in other content areas. Additionally, I want to present my findings at a faculty meeting during the beginning of the next school year as a means to garner more interest. That way, this isn't just an isolated, small community of learners. Eventually, my bigger goal is to have flipped classroom strategies being utilized in all different content areas. But in order to do this, I'm going to need to apply for a grant. I'd like to see one-to-one Chromebooks, kind of like how Baltimore County has them. Students can take Chromebooks home in order to access different activities online through the Canvas pages. This would really help in solving a lot of the issues my participants and myself found throughout this internship.